साथ रहे साहस तभी परचम लहराएगा। यदि हारी हिम्मत तूने तो हार ही जाएगा। साथ रहे साहस तभी।
Shall we proceed? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This has been designed to be an open session. We'll be discussing the previous year's question papers, basically, especially the question of 2023, the GS paper. This will be an analysis for the same. Right? Let's begin. Who is our host today?
Hello, sir. Am I audible to you? Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, please.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon to all of you. I, Pratiksha, on behalf of Dia Delhi, I'm truly honored to welcoming you all. As we all are here today for this enlightening session, let us begin with a beautiful quote that embodies the essence of our pursuit. As the lotus rises on its stalk, unsoiled by the mud and water, so the wise one speaks of peace and is unstained by the word. This ancient wisdom reminds us of the need to rise above challenges and maintain our inner serenity, especially in the pursuit of knowledge and success. In the spirit of our shared journey towards excellence, we are privileged to have among us an exceptional teacher, Mr. Souvik Mondal sir, with his diverse expertise in history, international relations, ethics, and essay writing. He truly epitomizes the title of an enterprising professional intending to continue his development as a scholar and a faculty for civil services. His commitment to results, his unwavering enthusiasm, and his ability to work with conviction and decisiveness have been honed over half a decade of dedicated service to aspiring civil servants. He has left his indelible mark on various renowned coaching institutes like Chanakya IS Academy, Elvas Foundation, and many more. With over 3,000 plus hours of lecturing experience, shaping the futures of over 2,000 plus students from across the subcontinent, his extensive experience, which includes appearances in the UPSC interview, WBPSC interviews, speaks volumes about his knowledge and dedication. Even in the face of challenges such as rejection in the Indian Navy medical examination, he has continued to shine in various central and state government examinations. So today, under the expert guidance of his, we embark on a journey of exploration and analysis, focusing on the art of answer writing for UPSC CRC mains, specifically within the realm of history. With the recent culmination of the UPSC CRC mains, this comprehensive discussion and analysis hold particular relevance, offering us invaluable insights into the examination process. So as we commence this session, let us remember that our journey is not merely about acquiring knowledge, but also about applying it with finesse. So together under Souvik sir tutelage, we aim to master the art of answer writing, preparing ourselves to rise above the challenges and emerge as the lotus does, unstained by the word, yet thriving in it. So sir, so you can take further with the class from here. Thank you.
Brilliant. Ajay, today we'll be learning about the answer writing practices, and especially we'll be analyzing the paper of 2023, right? So we are here especially for, the class has been designed for answer writing, and an analysis of questions of history and art and culture. For your paper 2, that is your general studies 1. This is today's curriculum. The class has been designed for answer writing and the importance of history as well. From the perspective of your mains, by looking at this year's paper, you can understand that there are a total of 7 questions. 7 questions where a total of 90 marks allotted for it. That means for a 250 marks question, roughly about 90 marks question has been allotted to history and art and culture. That means you have to give due share of importance. And also, traditionally speaking, we have been learning that post-independence and world history generally neglected by the students. You also have to give due share of importance to these segments. When we talk about the syllabus for your mains, it mostly constitutes of modern India or modern history of India, roughly between 1750s and till 1947. Also post-independence, world history, and art and culture. Also, you have to understand in this year's trend, they have a close reliance. There is a close reliance with that of the medieval and ancient India. That means they have talked about the technological advancement, how their impact was visible in society and so on. So we will be looking into the direction how you are supposed to prepare and how to write these answers. It will be a detailed analysis, right? Let's begin. That means from now on, also you have to give due share of importance to post-independence and world history, despite them being small segments and often students neglecting them. That questions are there in roughly every alternate year or so. You cannot neglect these topics. Basically, particularly from world history and post-independence, they have asked 15 marker questions. That is a making and breaking factor. So kindly do not neglect these topics as well, right? So our first question, before we do that, see, there are certain tips for answer writing. Understand, in the examination hall, especially for your GS papers, there are 20 different types of questions according to the syllabus. And these questions are distributed into 2 segments. One is of 10 questions of 10 marks each, where you have to write 150 words. Another pattern is of 15, is also of 10 questions, but will be of 15 marker each. And for each question, you are supposed to write 250 words. So again, these questions you will see by looking into the paper, mostly they are relatively technical in nature. And these types you will find they are relatively illustrative, more abstract, more subjective. You'll find that a total in the examination hall, you have to write 4,000 words, where you have to think differently for every question. That means you have to mentally train yourself, prepare yourself for the shift in the thought process. Majorly question, the students read one question and the residue, the leftovers gets carried over in the next question. You have to make sure that you do not fall into that trap. Also, you can understand you have to write 4,000 words, which is rather humanly impossible. That means you have to cut down the word limit. You have to cut down the word limit. But again, we would try our best not to compromise with the content, the quality of our answer. And also we'll try to fetch more marks in that decreased word limit. Thereby, we often encourage the pattern in points and also usage of graph, chart, diagrams, whenever they can put it. These are certain clues towards writing ideal or good quality answers that will be fetching more marks. Also, you have to do is focus on the extension of the questions. Extensions. You have to pay attention to these extensions. Often, we generalize these extensions and write down our own answer. Certain questions are rather on the basis of causality, causes. You have to offer reasons for them. They are roughly easy. For some, they are on the basis of certain appendages, extensions. For example, comment. For example, critically examine. For example, elucidate. For example, evaluate. You have to respond to the question or the statement in the question paper according to these extensions. These are certain tips and tricks towards ideal answer writing. You have to pay attention to these as well. Right? So make sure for all these questions, we will discuss. What you have to do is in the examination hall, basically for a question, generally speaking, there will be a statement followed by an extension, right? On the basis of the extension, you have to evaluate. You have to understand or react to the statement. This is what you have to do. Always your step will be simplify the statement. That means directly jump to what exactly the question is looking for. Generally speaking, if you simplify, it will not go beyond the direction. Either it will be causes or reasons or platform. It can be nature or the character. It can be significance or impact. Or there is a possibility it can be a comparative analysis. Comparative analysis or contrasting analysis or connectivity. Connectivity / linkage and continuity. Continuity. If you boil down the thesis statement, it will never go beyond these topics. This is another fundamental observation. Every time we would try to be, the paper setter would tries to confuse the student. You have to pinpoint the bull's eye, that what precisely is the question talking about. This is another tip for you. Once you boil down the thesis statement and characterize or categorize into these segments, the rest is rather very easy. Also understand these questions, sometimes they are opinionated or opinion based. Whenever we talk about an opinion based question, they can be one-sided, theoretically speaking, right or wrong. It can be balanced. Also, from a balanced view, shifting towards one particular direction, depending again upon the extension. This is for you to realize in the examination hall. Now understand the next protocol that you need to follow. After you have learned about these things, there are certain mechanical protocols. I found it to be very effective. That does not mean they are sacrosanct and that should be implemented as a formula. You should also exercise your own personal discretion to add your flavor to your answer. Here, for a particular question, the answer should be divided into introduction, body, and conclusion. Again, it does not mean that for every question you have to write introduction, body, and conclusion. But generally, if you write in a paragraph fashion, the first paragraph is generally accepted as the introduction. The followed, whatever you write subsequently, it considers to be the body which contains the answer. Followed by the conclusion, that is often the last paragraph, where you bring the discussion to an end. In the middle, in the body also, you can use graphicacy. That means diagrams, charts, maps, whatever you want to make your answer more efficient. Whenever you will practice, first, all you need to do is the brainstorming. After you have done the brainstorming for multiple number of questions, the brainstorming has to be written, that is the protocol. Followed by classification or orientation. After you have done about 80 to 100 structuring, I generally think that you can do it on your mind. You do not need to write. In the examination hall, except for your essay, I do not recommend structuring or written structuring. In the essay, you have to do it because your life depends on it. And there is only two chances for you, question 1 and question 2. You have to, despite how efficient you are, you have to structure, make a written structuring in the essay paper. For these, I do not recommend. At least when you practice, you have to do it. It is a mandatory practice. We have one question. Should we use the subpoints, subheadings in the body? You can. But again, the advice is some students do a lot of color change. If you have the time, well and good. Do not use red, pink, such colors. But again, given the paucity of time, extreme need for time, I do not think that you can change a lot of colors. So writing in one color and putting a box or something like that may help you, may aid you. So here you have, once you have written the points, then you're supposed to align them. or orient them. Probably this will be having the importance of being written in the first point, this in the third, this in the second, this in the fourth. Whenever you will write the answer, it will be 1, 2, 3 followed by 4. It will be more organized. And as you keep on doing it, your organizational capabilities will improve with the passage of time. This is my advice. Sir, if you use maps, graphs, what is the minimum number of words we can use? We'll answer this question. Sampada is asking, sir, what should be the approach of conclusion, especially in history conclusion? We'll discuss. See, generally speaking, we have made the word limit somewhere. This is the word limit, 4,000, which is not possible. Roughly speaking, in essay paper, the limit is 1,000 to 1,200 words. So here you have to write two answers, roughly 2,000 to 2,400 words. This is achievable very easily with spare amount of time to check and evaluate by yourself. So I will accept that roughly in the examination hall, you are capable in writing anywhere between 2,800 to 3,000 with a lot of practice and stress in your head. Maybe beyond that, depending upon the personal capabilities. For some, you can write 3,300, 3,500. For some, it can be 2,800 to rather 3,000, depending on your own capacity. There is no formula that I can answer. Roughly speaking, for every question, if you take away 10%, here also take away 10% of the word limit, 10 to 15%. Generally, it does not impact the content of the quality of the content. Thereby, it will not be penalizing. It will not be directly visible. If you directly make it 50% less, it will be directly visible. About 10 to 20%, it will not be directly visible, impacting the quality of the content. So that is my advice. If you take away about 20% from every question, that is roughly 30 words. You shave about 30 words from each question. Here also you shave about 50 words. Then it becomes 120 words. These questions become about 200 words. So it is 1,200 plus 2,000. It becomes 3,200, which is rather achievable task. Now understand, if you write a lot of bullet points, you can further decrease the word limit and also not compromising the content of your lectures. I also advise you do the same. Understand, in the examination hall, for every question, to write one question, roughly you need 6 to 8 minutes, not beyond that. If you give some question 9 minutes, doable. If you give 15 minutes, you will not be able to complete the paper. My second advice is that attempt all questions. Do not leave any question. According to some advices, you should rather leave or 1 or 2 questions and attempt the rest 18 very efficiently. It's a bad advice. For an example, I'll give you a rough interpretation here itself. For suppose every question, or you have decided to leave 2 questions which you do not know. I expect that you could have fetched 2 marks for each. That is a very humble, basic marks probably you have fetched. Maybe 1, maybe 3, you never know. So for every paper, you're getting an advantage of 4 marks that the student has chose to leave these questions, did not get. Roughly, there is essay paper, basically it does not count. We have the GS 1, 2, 3, 4 and 4, 5, right? GS4, right? And the optional paper, that is 2. That means you can understand that there are 4 papers and 2 optional, 6. That is roughly about 20 plus marks. It can go to 30 even. Naturally, it is a deciding factor in the final merit list. Thereby, it is not advisable to quit. Also, the entire set of 20 questions in one examination hall, it can be categorized into, suppose, easy, moderately challenging, or moderate, difficult, and rather unknown. The number of unknown questions given the preparation back then, or actually you are in the peak stage of your preparation, the number of unknown questions cannot be beyond 2 questions. It is highly unlikely, even where here you will have some general idea. It cannot possibly be beyond 2 questions. So here you attempt first the easy questions. Also remember, there is a higher chance of getting marks in technical questions. There is no hard line formula that you will be given more marks in 10 marker questions. But yes, technical questions generally fetch a lot of marks compared to the 15 marker questions in a relative approach, right? So here, for all these questions, you attempt for the easy. Here, you write the bulk of the questions in the first and by mid of the second hour. Also, you gain a lot of confidence here, which will be reflected in the moderately challenging questions. Probably you will outperform what you did in the easy questions because of the confidence gained here. It will be reflected here. And at the end, as you have lesser time, also you will see the overall handwritings in the paper. The ones you have written with time in your hand will be better, will be well organized, good looking. What you have tried in the later phase will be rather illegible. So you have to make sure that you are writing in that pattern, right? In the end phase, as you have about 10 minutes or 15 minutes left, you attempt for the last remaining 2 questions, right? This is the general approach. You need to work on these directions. See, our first question that was asked in 2023 paper, that is, explain the role of geographical factors towards the development of ancient India. It is a 10 marker question and you are supposed to write 150 words. What you could have written or what you should have written in the examination hall, let us have a look. Often this question will have certain key elements, key highlights. Here, history generally has the components of space and time. Right? Here, you identify the element of space and time. Time is given ancient India, also the space, ancient India. The ancient phase and the subcontinent, that is India. And the subcontinent, that is India. And here you have to connect the role of geographical factors towards the development of ancient India. That means the events happening in ancient India and the connection of geographical factors factors responsible for it. Responsible for it. If you boil it down, this is the very question that has been asked. You have to connect the geographical factors that led to events of ancient history. Ancient history, basically speaking, or roughly, you can add the element of prehistory. More importantly, Vedic period onward. Vedic period onwards till about early medieval age. Early medieval age. See how you will begin. You have done the brainstorming. You have boiled the statement down to the understanding that this is what the paper setter is looking for. For every question, irrespective of the fact that you know the answer or you're not, you can come to this phase. Again, the very observation, the dismemberment, disintegration will fetch you some partial marks. Even if you do not know anything about the question, this understanding will give you some basic marks. So do not skip on your analysis. That is equally important. First, you can discuss about the geographical setting of the country. Discuss the geographical setting. I will keep in mind how it is reflecting in events of ancient history. I can talk about the borders of the subcontinent, border setting of subcontinent, and I will talk about the topography. That is mountain ranges, plains, plateaus, etc. The best way I find doing it is the usage of a map. You can also explain this by using maps. For suppose, I'll simply set the border by the mountain ranges in the northwest, that is Hindu Kush, Suleiman, and Kirthar. That means it is isolated from the West Asian region and also connected through, that is responsible for isolation of the subcontinent and also partial connection through passes, that is Khyber, Bolan, and Gomal. I will use this in the examination hall. You could have used this to understand the advent of the Vedic population, advent of the Persians, the Greek invasion, the Central Asian invasion, and later on the Islamic invasion. This is what you have to write in the examination hall. This will have political impact. This will have socio-cultural impact. This will have impact in commerce. This will have impact in availability of metal, all the other cases reflecting in the politics of northern India. Here is the Himalayan ranges or Himalayas. And here you have the Arkan Yoma ranges. Virtually, it detaches the contact from Rest of the world, that is of China. Here is the Tibet and also China. Here you have the Thar Desert. Here the Run of Kutch. Here is marked with the Indo-Gangetic Plain. Here is the Deccan Ranges, and it is surrounded by sea on 3 sides. Surrounded by Indian Ocean. This is the geographical setting. This will eventually help you understand the events of history. You do not have much space. You talk about certain setting. Number one, what you could have done. Number one is enlistment of foreign invasions. Also facilitation or facilitating external land-based contact. You can start with, basically, if you talk about the entire events of history, you can also start it with Indus Valley civilization, where there was land-based contact with the Mesopotamians, as the Mesopotamian texts had referred to the IVC people as Meluhans. But history basically starts with written evidence, that is Vedic people. That means in introduction, along with the map, you could have discussed that it begins, the platform is established as early as the Indus Valley civilization, when there was, we find the artificial port. That means seaborne trade as well as land-based contact. Artificial port, Lothal, Dholavira, all these areas you can incorporate in the answer. Then foreign invasions, you can talk about the Persian invasion. You can talk about the Greek or the Macedonian invasion of Alexander. Greek invasion in 6th century BC. Persian invasion 6th century BC. Greek invasion about 3rd century or 4th century BC. 326. Then is the Central Asian invasion. Central Asian invasion. That is roughly between 200 BC to 300 CE. Then followed by, during the Gupta period, there is the Huna invasion. Huna invasion, that is 6th century or 5th century CE. And the Islamic invasions. We have to finish, as the time period is ancient India. These are the foreign invasions. Also, the major dynasties in North India. You can talk about the Mauryas and the Guptas. It flourished under the major dynasties, Mauryas and the Guptas. Before that also, I'll write it here. Before that also, you can talk about the Vedic population or history in the setting of Northwest India. That is Sapta Sindhu region. Sapta Sindhu region. The Mauryas and the Guptas, that is the Gangetic Plains. The capital, the center of all activities being Patliputra. You can skip because we have skipped the Mahajanpad period, all these things. See, next is you can talk about the period of Harsha, followed by the tripartite struggle. We cannot go beyond tripartite struggle. This is happening on the context of Doab region of Ganga Yamuna. Ganga and Yamuna. That means Kannauj as the new setting, in the new setting, importance of Kannauj. So geography is playing a critical role in our understanding. This is what you have to incorporate in your answer. But the major folly a student might encounter is to neglect the south. Definitely you will be incorporating the far south by the cultural uniqueness. And separate identity. Of southern India. Also, close affinity to coasts or coastal area. Fostered commerce. That means external contact. External contact. Here you can add about the Sangam society or the Sangam period. The tribal chiefdoms. Tribal chiefdoms of the Cholas, the Cheras, and the Pandyas. You can talk about the Satavahanas and their maritime trade. Here the Sangamas had Roman contact, trade with the Romans. The Satavahanas and also later the Pallavas, the Chalukyas, and the early medieval phase, the Imperial Cholas. Imperial Cholas. Here, the geographical setting, all of a sudden you will see that the Kaveri Delta will become, Kaveri Delta became significantly important in the south, and also the Tungabhadra Doab in the Deccan region, or Krishna Tungabhadra Doab in the Deccan region. So all these are directly we can enlist in your answer. Zahid is absolutely right. That is Raichur Doab. Raichur Doab is roughly the buffer between present day Karnataka, northern Karnataka, and Telangana region. Raichur Doab is the location which become the new importance as India will turn towards a feudal economy. So this is what you have to answer in a very brief bullet point fashion. This is what the question is looking for in a holistic approach, how you'll answer, right? Also, you can enlist, Vanshika is saying that there is the element of climate. Also, climate will be responsible. Climate is responsible. That means we are targeting monsoon. Because of monsoon and also the Himalayan glaciers, the northern Indian rivers are perennial, thereby agriculture is bountiful. So all these things, but again, in a 150 words answer, you are not supposed to write all these things. Roxana is saying minerals. You can write the entire history, then you will not be having time to write 150 words. Again, minerals are also an important source. The rise of Mahajanpads, the Magad especially, and of Avanti, that was for their mineral resources. Again, the contact of the Indus Valley civilization, all these things, we will conclude it here. Our next question is, what was the difference between Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore? In their approach towards education and nationalism. Education and nationalism. Again, there is a question that Shilpi is asking, sir, do we need to consolidate these all? Asha, these are my students from Asha. I think it was Alexander Gay. All right. It is precisely designed for the advanced students. I do not know if the young students are also here a part of it. This is not precisely for you. You have been informed. We will discuss. This is a class for the previous year's question papers, right? So again, you can sit the class or skip it. You can attend our actual classes, right? So here the question is the difference between Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore in their approach towards education and nationalism. Now, especially for the ones who have no previous idea, it is not recommended. It will only be an added burden to you. So you can choose not to attend, right? It is a 150 words question of 10 marks. Again, it is a very technical question. What exactly is the question looking for? A contrasting analysis. Or a comparative analysis, contrasting analysis between Gandhi and Tagore on the question of nationalism and on the question of education. First is on the question of nation or nationalism. The question of nation or nationhood or other nationalism. In the introduction, these kind of questions, never think that you have to speak in favor of Gandhi or you have to speak in favor of Tagore. All you have to do is that try to provide a balanced approach in the answer. Never it should be reflecting that Gandhi is better than that of Tagore or Tagore is better than that of Gandhi. So in this way, keep that in mind as a person writing that answer in the examination hall. Right? For the question of Nationalism, see, for the view of Tagore, it can be summed up as Catholic internationalism. This is a technical term. Using these kind of technical terms is often will be fetching more marks. The class is particularly designed for a number of audience who are from various backgrounds, who may be present in the class yesterday or not. I am very well aware. I have my memories, by God's grace. It is well functioning. I remember what generally happens, what I did yesterday. Or the term is Catholic internationalism. You can incorporate that in your answer, right? That means the narrow outlook of nationalism was absent in Tagore's ideology. This is what you have to emphasize on. He did not believe in the narrow conventional attitude of nationalism. He believed that the modern outlook of nationalism was self-defeating and often limiting the exposure of the man. He felt that nationalism was disintegrating in nature, rather. It was not unifying. He believed that he would definitely want that tomorrow he becomes or he can be a part of any nation as such. It should not be the case that he will be limited with his own personal identity, the way he was born, and will remain so for the rest of his life. This is Tagorean view of nationalism. He would want to become a part and parcel of any population as such. Also, it is reflected that the idea of rejection of British culture, idea of rejection of British language, culture, and products, it was not approved by Tagore. For example, it is understood from Tagore's criticism of non-cooperation, especially its boycott program. That means burning of foreign clothes. Burning of foreign clothes. Also, you have to understand he had deep regards for European literature and traditions, especially the works of Shakespeare, the Victorian literature, etc. At the same time, he had deep regard for Sanskrit literature. This is proven by the element of Catholic internationalism. That also, in contrast, you can add that his understanding was also the criticism. It was not a one-sided approach. Also the criticism of the actions of British and his militant side reflected in two events. One is partition of Bengal. Partition of Bengal, he became particularly vocal. You have to incorporate that in your answer. And next is the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. The Jallianwala Bagh massacre, where he gave up his knighthood. This is how we understand the Tagorean view of nationalism. Coming back to Gandhian view of nationalism, or rather here, Gandhian view of state system. That means, see, in the examination hall, I am saying at the same time not saying. I will not be made a profile. Profiling should not be done for a prospective civil servant. You give everything and you end up giving nothing. That is the idea I want you to understand from these. You have to give every side of that one particular character. It cannot be linear, one-sided. For suppose the idea of Gandhi. Views on education. Sorry, Gandhiji's views on nationalism. Right, it is marked by rejection of Western trends, especially the democratic model, democracy, especially industrialization, and capitalism, and also English language. Instead, he preferred the indigenous systems, indigenous customs of governance. Instead, he preferred handicrafts or village handicrafts industries. And for language, he preferred Hindi. That means this Hindi was also all inclusive in character, was to borrow elements from different languages. That means he preferred homogeneity of cultural identity. That means in this sense, we can point that he was deeply Indian. That means, according to again the book Shekhar Bandyopadhyay, Place to Partition, one of the ideal books written for preparation for modern India, he reflects that there has been no personal bias whatsoever in his understanding of the countrymen. Right? Also, Gandhian nationalism was often broad and reflected in his definition of Swaraj. He kept the definition of Swaraj to be open-ended and inclusive in character, where he said that he does not want borders, he does not want government, he does not want law, restrictive impression, subjugation, and rather the person to be just and good by themselves. That is the order of the world he would like to believe in or live in. That is the idea of Swaraj, to be realized through the model of Gram Raj. Right? So in this way, you have the general idea of Gandhiji's views on nation. Right? We have a question. Nayan is asking, can we use such statements as Nehru said, no two persons could probably differ so much as Gandhi and Tagore. Nayan, until and unless you know about the differences and give the views of Nehru on this matter, I would rather suggest do not comment on it. As of now, I do not exactly remember precisely what Jawaharlal Nehru might have added. Until and unless you have a clear understanding for that, you cannot provide. But then again, here you are quoting Nehru, thereby your personal responsibility to the comment does not play out. So again, if you have the right idea, you do not have much word limit here. So I'd rather suggest you abstain writing from it. Now, on education, for Tagore, his views can be inclination towards naturalism. Right? His educational ideas can be reflected in his literary works and also the functioning of Shanti Niketan or Vishwa Bharati at Shanti Niketan. Next is inclination towards naturalism, that is nature. Also, rejection of standard rigid institutionalized practice of education. He rejected the standard worldview of education. Also added artistic practices, added programs for artistic development of the mind of the child. That means dance, drama, music, poetry, etc. What about Gandhiji's views on education? Gandhiji's views on education were teaching in Hindi. It is reflected in the Wardha scheme of basic education. Teaching in Hindi between 2nd and 7th standard. This is for the purpose of 7th to 8th standard, right? This is for the purpose of national integration. National integration. Also, handicrafts industry. For to address the crisis of, address the unemployment crisis and also harness the full economic potential and also the purpose of Gandhian education was to prepare the mind of the child, to prepare the mind of the child, mind of the child towards better contribution in the society. These are the views regarding Gandhiji on education. Right? So here in the conclusion, once again, you have to focus on the correlation rather than looking for differences. Conclusion is more towards finding bonhomie, finding affiliation between the two characters. Try to bridge the gap. That means whatever they did, their end result was towards a common vision. Both were also working hand in hand. You can discuss that Tagore was fond of the actions of Gandhi and vice versa. Tagore was the one who gave Gandhiji the title of Mahatma. He was a both were deeply revered figure who contributed to the development of modern India. This may be a direction towards approaching the conclusion. Right? We'll move on to the next question. The next question in your prelims that was asked that bring out the socio-economic effects. One moment, please. Bring out the socio-economic effect or effects of the introduction of railways in different countries of the world, in different countries of the world. Again, this is a 10 marker question of 150 words. Again, this is a question for your world history. And to be very honest, no standard textbook has directly attempted this kind of a question. These are those type of questions you need independent and critical thinking in the examination hall. That will help you answer. Now, the question says the railways and the impact on society and economy. These are the impacts. You are not supposed to look into multiple impacts only on society and economy, and also in the world context. Now, what I see, what you could have seen, the world context can be continent-wise analysis. Continent-wise analysis. Also from the perspective of colonizers and colonies. Maybe you could have thought of other ideas, categorizations as well. This is how we see it. Continent-wise analysis can be of Americas, Europe, and Asia. Colonizers can be on similar directions. Here, Africa should also be there. Colonizers and colonies will be mostly Europe and interaction with rest of the world. This is how you could have seen the answer or seen the question. See, when we say about talk about the impact, basically on economy, and society. Society can be of class. In the context of India, caste identity. Next is the question of women or gender. Economy, you have to understand it from the perspective of commerce, in the perspective of connectivity. And when you talk about the colonizers and colonies, the finance capitalism starts playing a role. Finance capitalism. All these you have to incorporate. How you should be incorporating? By looking into the entire segment into positive aspects and negative aspects. This will help you consolidate your answer, or else it will look haphazard. See, because of railways, you can talk about it led to unification of countries. That is happening in Europe and America. Unification of countries in Europe and America. Yes. For the context of Europe, you will talk about Germany, most importantly, Germany, and also to Italy. Because of railways, what happened is, because of railways, industrial revolution got a boost. Naturally, you can connect in the examination hall. Movement of iron and coal. The market became closer. More mobilization of resources. Also led to military development, led to military development. Please remember, better mobilization led to defeat of the South. Defeat of the South by the North. By the North. North, that is the Unionists, emerged victorious over the Confederacy states. Also, in the case of Germany, Prussia had developed the railways, and Prussia defeated the rest of the nearby enemies. Especially it is visible in Franco-Prussian War and Austro-Prussian War. In the Austro-Prussian War of 1865-66, also in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870-71. In both the cases, military gave the upper hand to Prussia, and the Zollverein, the economic union of the Clan-Deutschland, that means the smaller Germany, functioned through railways. These are certain important elements you can give. Also remember, railways addressed or helped end class difference to an extent, or discrimination. Inside of railways, the identity, the separatist tendencies of class identities became blurred. That can be another component. It led to further job creation, further employment opportunities, and so on. All these points can be discussed. Also, problems like famine could be addressed better, could be addressed better. A number of ideas you can discuss. Again, it is a 150 words question. So these are more than enough points to write in the examination hall. Let us look into, suppose, the negative consequences. Especially when it comes to negative consequences, it is about the colonies. Especially think about Africa and India in mind. It was the example of finance capital. Finance capital. That means it played like a fundamental tool. Fundamental tool for drain of wealth. Also, railways led to dumping of foreign finished goods. Dumping of foreign finished goods. Foreign finished goods. That means contributed to destruction of handicrafts industry or indigenous handicrafts industry. Also, railways led to fresh colonizations. For example, the South Africans, the Maasai and Zulu identity, their personal identity were blurred as more number of people started pouring in with the advent of railways. Also, new new problems surfaced. Most importantly, intensity of famine, intensity of plague or epidemic. Please remember, in the ancient world or medieval world, as societies were isolated, diseases generally did not used to spread. With railways, now more people were covering in a close isolated or boxes, and once again they reached the shores of different parts, now the intensity of epidemics increased manifold. Right? So in this way, you can write down the contributions of railways, basic brainstorming. Shivani has written something very unnecessary. Not our concern. Again, the age or the school classes, it does not matter for us. Dipesh, right, can we attempt this question on Emmanuel Wallerstein model? What is the Emmanuel Wallerstein model? First, I need to remember that I do not know that model. Our next question we can discuss. Our next question is what are the major technological changes technological changes introduced during the Sultanate period? How did those technological changes influence Indian society? This is a question of 15 marks and 250 words. Now, this is a question on the more difficult side. Here, the elements, the content of the question is rather limited for us, and yet we will learn or attempt to write down the answer, right? Right, some of the comments which Dipesh, you have to elaborate more. I have no idea. I have to find out more about it when I get time. Right? What are the major technological changes introduced during the Sultanate period? The question is basically two parts. One part is changes in technology. First, the introduction part, you can definitely discuss about the Delhi Sultanate time period, a brief understanding. That means the introduction here in this question, whenever you will be in paucity of information, try to add to the content by giving additional relevant information. First element is introduction, where we will talk about brief details about Delhi Sultanate, right? The time period being 1206 to roughly 1526, with the Mamelukes, followed by the Khiljis, followed by the Tughlaqs, followed by the Sayyids, followed by the Lodhis. They were mostly the component of Turkish Afghans, Turkish and Afghan elements, Turks and Afghans. Also Persian customs and traditions, Persian customs and traditions. And they belonged to West Asia. When they entered India, it reflected in polity, society, culture, language, religion, that is part of culture, and also technology. This will give you the platform to begin with the technological advances. Technology can be for military advances, it can be of textile industry, especially textile industry. The more dimension you can think in the examination hall. Textile industry of cotton and silk. Technology in agriculture or agrarian customs or agrarian practices. And metallurgy. Metallurgy reflected in utensils, military equipments, and coins. You have enough points to discuss on technology. You explain these points, you have enough content to do so. Here, for cotton, you can discuss the introduction of, by the way, another component can be paper industry. That is also special to Delhi Sultanate. So here, regarding textile industry, you can talk about the introduction of spinning wheel. And also the introduction of carder's bow. Carder's bow. That is also known as dhunia. Carder's bow is that separates the seeds from the cotton. You explain some of the elements. And also spinning wheel, conventionally by the Chinese, later on adapted by the the Delhi Sultanate, basically from the Arabs also. With this, we have some help also regarding technology. Architecture also can play a brilliant role, right? For agricultural practices, customs and traditions. By the way, it is military advances we have left out. Military technologies, mostly iron stirrups. We were using stirrups, although, and also efficient cavalry, and mounted archers. Mounted archers. And also the humble beginning of usage of gunpowder. We find the usage of gunpowder in the Vijayanagara Bahmani conflict for the earliest time. It is said that gunpowder was used for mostly mining purposes during the Lodis as well. Right? I cannot, Zahid is saying usage of cannons. You cannot say cannon. Cannon is a particular Rumi technique, Ottoman technique, that is from the Mughals. You cannot add it to the Delhi Sultanate as the question precisely mentions. So here you can discuss about the usage of gunpowder. Agricultural practices, that is seeds and implements, attempts to bring more land, barren land into the fold of agriculture. These attempts were made by Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Loans, that is known as Takavi or Sondhar, they were given. Diwani Ko or Kohi or Diwane Amiri Kohi, headed by Diwane Amiri Kohi. That was a department particularly for the development of agriculture. Also during Feroz Shah Tughlaq, number of irrigational channels, these projects were done. Persian wheels became in vogue for the meeting of water requirements. India primarily dominated by monsoon. Irrigational projects were also carried out. Please remember Agrahata was pre-Delhi Sultanate, but Persian wheel also, it became more in vogue, more in practice. Right? Metallurgy, that means the usage of silver, usage of potin, these kind of art. It started developing in India or became very much efficient. Paper industry, special to Delhi Sultanate. Conventionally, palm leaves, these were used for the writing purposes of the indigenous Indians, replaced by paper. Paper already used by the Chinese. Indians adopted it under Delhi Sultanate. Architecture, for example, true arch and true dome, they became the new feature. Also the minaret style of architecture, another component of the Delhi Sultanate. True arch and a true dome, these are new styles. Also usage of lime mortar. Use of lime mortar as cementing agent, and techniques such as headers and stretchers technique. English bond style once again used. Right? Next is the usage of lime mortar, minaret architecture, and so on. Also secular style of architecture. Secular architecture, that is forts, bathing places, sarais or royal inn, etc. Right? These are the new elements. In this way, you can discuss. We have one comment: cannons were used in the Battle of Raichur before. It does not matter. It is just to prove that you are right. Unnecessary haggling over prices. It is the technique was used and more in vogue. That means to prove it wrong, there can be some factors. The battles, these kind of events are exceptions, not the norm. Right? And their impact on the society. This is our second part of the question. The question, how did these technological changes influence Indian society? Again, was there much of impact? Probably not. Here you can discuss more skilled artisans. That means new skills were incorporated within Indian artisans, and also more institutionalized practice of slavery. Slaves were used for these purposes, and they were used in the royal karkhanas. Also, a designated department was there in the court of Firuz Shah Tughlaq, that is Diwani Bandaghan. So in this way, you can understand. Position of women. The position of women did not improve. The class distinction, caste system remained in place. Right? So technological changes created some elements in skilled artisans, but overall structure of the society remained rather same. With the advent of Delhi Sultanate, we can talk about different elements became a part. According to the Sanskrit literatures, they were referred to as shakas, later on meluhas, mlechas, and later on, according to their own ethnic identities, the Irani group, the Turani group, the Afghani group, and so on. Right? In this way, you can talk about the society, but particularly for technology, the impact is limited on these dimensions. There is nothing beyond that you can discuss. Right? Let us have a look at our next question. How did the colonial rule affect the tribals in India? And what was the tribal response? What was the tribal response to the colonial oppression? This is a 15 marker question and of 250 words. How did the colonial rule affect the tribals in India, and what was the tribal response to the colonial oppression? The first part of the question is that colonial rule, or how did the colonial rule affect the tribals in India? That means basically it is, the question should be answered in the light of tribal movements, that means you have to discuss the causes behind tribal uprisings in India, and answer it in such a way that it is connected, the causalities are connected to the colonial rule. That means those causes which are associated or directly aligned with the colonial rule. That is what you have to prove. You cannot directly start by writing the causes of the tribal uprisings in India. Those causes which are associated with colonial rule, this you have to explain. What are the points you can explain here? For example, you can talk about the British encroachment of tribal lands. You can discuss lack of understanding of tribal view of land rights or hereditary land rights. You can discuss about, for example, during the Mundas, they were not knowing about the Khutkatti system. Often they were toppled by or taken over, as the concept of immovable property was absent with the tribals. That led to a misunderstanding. Also, the introduction of railways. You can discuss different dimensions of the introduction of railways. You can discuss land were taken away, forest resources were made reserve, categorization, and introduction of forest laws. Introduction of restrictive forest laws. Right, Madras, you can refer to the Madras Forest Law of 1882-83, all these points. The categorization of different forests to restrict the movement of the tribals, all these points can be incorporated in your answer, right? Also, Christian missionary activities. Etc. Elaborate these points and you have the answer for your question. These are the colonial or the causes which are directly associated with the colonial customs and traditions. They reflected in the tribal uprisings, right? The next part of the question is that what was the tribal response to the colonial oppression? The tribal response, that means you have to give insight for the second part. A brief insight of tribal uprisings. Try to give a brief excerpt on the, suppose, the Chuar uprising, coal mutiny, 1831. You can discuss, it is from 1760s till 1800s. Coal mutiny of 1831. Santhal rebellion. Of 1855 under Sidhu and Kanu. Munda rebellion. Of 1899. Before that also number of rebellions happened. And you can discuss Rampa of 1920s. Rampa rebellion. Right? Clues are here. How did they react? Right? Let us have a look at our next question. From being net food importer in 1960s, India has emerged as a net food exporter to the world? Provide reasons. This is a question that was asked, 15 marker, 250 words. Provide reasons. This particular question is on Green Revolution. Right? It is a question on Green Revolution. Here you have to talk about the journey from net food importer to net food exporter. The question talks about the journey from being how India achieved the status of net food exporter from net food importer. This is what you have to discuss. Here in the introduction, provide the definition of Green Revolution. You cannot directly jump towards Green Revolution. The idea is that you say that India in the initial days, right after independence, was a net food importer, facing crisis, food shortages of basic elements, and depended on foreign aid, especially under the PL 480 program, Public Law 480, that is known as Food for Peace. That is also in common parlance known as the food for rat. Substandard US food was dumped in the Indian market. And India took certain systematic steps to gain the status of net food exporter. And this journey is known in the post-independent histories as Green Revolution. Then you can, in the subsequent article or paragraph, you can define the definition of Green Revolution. Right? Green Revolution does not talk about one particular scheme of the government, but they refer to a series of steps taken by the independent Indian government in the they were taken in 60s, 70s, and their results were reflected in 80s and 90s. These series of schemes, policies, administrative and otherwise changes taken were collectively known as Green Revolution. Then what you have to discuss that what are the steps the government took to make India a net food exporter. You can add the element which seems to be very rational because it is a 15 marker question to discuss why or what was the challenge of India being a food importer. You have to discuss that India embarked on a socialist model. As India embarked on a socialist model, we tried to create India to be a self-sustained consumption-driven economy. We did not want overarching presence of foreigners. We had just become independent. We were skeptical about any foreigners and about any foreign money coming to the country. There was a term, this worldview was ripe under the Cold War politics. Also a term coined by Kwame Nkrumah, the Ghanaian premier. He termed the term neo-colonization. Even after decolonization, with foreign money, they were freshly colonizing in a different way. This term was neo-colonization. Thereby, India could not remain as a net importer of food. Also understand, India had to depend on foreign currency because India was deficit in energy. India was deficit in oil energy. Thereby, India had to purchase oil to operate its industries, and thereby because oil is the liquid gold, and they, to purchase that, it was connected with the dollar. It happened in the Nixon regime. So naturally, India had to depend on purchasing of oil, and that needed foreign currency. Now, if you are spending the foreign currency in buying food, that at least you can manage. That means India was facing a lot of trade deficit, balance of payment crisis. So all these steps they took for the purpose of green revolution. Green revolution, that means introduction of high yield variety seeds. Here you will talk about the technological advancement. Green revolution is basically the fourth planning committee onwards. The statement of Lal Bahadur Shastri, that is Jai Jawan Jai Kisan. Right? Briefly, you can also talk about why we were needing green revolution. We lost the battle of Sino-Indian War of 62. Right? The country was having separatist tendencies. Hunger is the reason for all the revolutions of the world. It starts with food and also ends with food. And food became so much essential for the national integrity of the country as well. The states refused to abide by the mandate of the union. Under Shastri administration and beyond, the states refused that hunger. If people are hungry and dying, what will they do with the states? In a very practical understanding. So they also became a question of national integrity. Finally, they took certain steps. For example, M.S. Swaminathan. He is known as the father of Indian Green Revolution. In the international context, it is Norman Borlaug. They identified the geoclimatic conditions of Punjab and Haryana, Western UP. The climatic conditions ideal, all they needed was water. Irrigational facilities, infrastructure already done during British, under Dalhousie administration, some during Firoz Shah Tughlaq. So per capita land holding was very high. That means conducive for extensive farming. All the components you can add. They facilitated for subsidy in diesel, subsidy in electricity. They, under changes, they created for priority sector lendings. That means the public sector banks were mandated to serve in the villages, easy credit facilitation, so that money is there pumped in. Right? They gave incentivization for production of rice and wheat under MSP, minimum support prices. So all these steps, series of steps were taken for the purpose of promotion of green revolution. And so much so that India, from the position of net importer, became the net exporter, right? Also, you can incorporate that they needed more production. They introduced chemical fertilizers. They introduced for the increasing the shelf value of the food. And also so that they are not consumed by the pests, they introduced chemical fertilizers and chemical pesticides, that is introduction of DDT, and also the subsidization of urea. So all these kind of steps were taken. That Zahid, can you take LPG reform? I do not think so, because LPG reforms will be rather in the 90s. I cannot see anything with regard to LPG. If you can find, if you can see it, you can help me out. As of now, I do not see it. As we are, because the impact of green revolution was rather visible during the period of LPG. When we say the increase of wheat production and rice production, twice and thrice respectively, that is visible in the 80s and 90s. So LPG reform is disintegration of Soviet Union, India facing financial crisis on that context. Kindly do not connect that. Right. So this is regarding your answer. This is what is expected, right? Our next question is, what are the main features? Our last question. What are the main features of Vedic society? And religion? Do you think some of the features are still prevailing in Indian society? Indian society. This is your last question. This is again of 15 marker. And of 250 words, right? See, informations are always galore. Information, there is always plenty. For Green Revolution, some of you might start writing on criticisms of these incentives. These are too much far-fetched. Do not overwrite. Often you will find there are more information available. If you get diverted with more information and keep on writing that, it is also self-defeating. You will not be having enough time and energy left for writing other questions. So make sure you also consolidate the plentifulness of information, right? What are the main features of Vedic society and religion? And do you think that some of the features are still prevailing in the Indian society, right? The first component is features of Vedic society, society. Enlist them. I would want you to write the introduction should be on the Vedic culture. You can give the understanding of time period, categorization, and also advances in geography. Advances in geography. For example, you write down the Vedic period is an ethnic cultural identity, not a racial component. And Vedic period is referring to the population or the dominance of the population who stayed for a prolonged period of time in Central Asia before entering India through the passes in the northwest, and who later became a part of the population. The Vedic people, the Vedic period basically lasts between 1500 BCE to roughly 600 BCE and classified into two segments, that is early Vedic period and or Rig Vedic period and later Vedic period. These are the two classifications of the Rig Vedic Vedic period. Rig Vedic from 1500 BCE to rather 1000 BCE. To later Vedic period, it will be 1000 BCE to 600 BCE. This is some categorization you have made. So you can also talk about the society and the transition from Rig Vedic to later Vedic period. In society, try to encompass the points such as system of Varna, condition of women, and the patriarchal notion. These are the three elements. Also encompass the transition from Rig Vedic to later Vedic. Discuss the position of women. That means they were entitled to, they were a member of the Vidhat, they were a member of the Sabha. From the term Sabhavati, we find scholars like Lopamudra, Gargi, Apala, Ghosha, and their compositions in the Vedic hymns. We also find the popularity of women in the pantheon of gods and goddesses. For example, that is the merger of society and religion. That means Usha and Aditi, these are female goddesses, a part of the same. But unfortunately, in the later period, we do not see women are more domesticated. Their role is important within the family and not outside. This is one of the interpretations, and their role in the outside of the household becomes limited. Right? System of Varna, probably not the initial phase of the Vedic period, but later on it becomes a part. System of Varna has been justified. It has been a part of, you can incorporate the 10th mandala of the Purusha Shukta. And they tried to justify the Varna system, where Dvija status initially enjoyed by the first three communities. Later on, Dvija was entitled only by the Brahmin. Right? The society, you can understand, it is a sacrificial cult. Ritualistic, rather, later sacrificial cult. These are certain changes you can incorporate. Regarding a religion, you have to discuss the status of religion plus also transition. For religion, you have to discuss the custom of rituals and the importance of sacrifices. Transition, later it will be more dominated by sacrifices. It will become a sacrificial cult. You can discuss, initially there are 33 pantheons, with most important being Indra, known as Purandar, as highest number of hymns dedicated to Indra. Second most importance will be Agni, the priest of gods. Later on, the transition, Purandara will lose its importance. Agni will become an initiator god. For any sacrifice, it will be beginning with Indra, Agni. All will lose importance. Religion in the early Vedic period, it was on the basis of nature. Personification of nature, idol worship absent. But in the later Vedic period, the 33 pantheons will be replaced by the triumvirate. That means the worship of Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesh. Also, later Vedic period, discrimination of women is visible. No female goddess. Only in the Guptas or much later period, you will find the rise of Durga, Kali, all the Shakti tradition or Shakt cult. Not in the later Vedic period. These are the changes of religion. Shifting towards continuity. You have to be careful that still we practice caste system. In that spirit, you can discuss in a very humble approach. Naman is writing animism. Naman, animism was not the original practice of Vedic cult, but also later on animism will be accepted. Animism is a concept where we believe in a totemic kind of a worship. We believe life in every other living and non-living objects. So in one sense we can say, because there is the god of plants, Soma. There is the god of light, something like that. So do not use a term which you will face difficulty in explaining. Right. Zaid is asking, also transition from worshipping to gift giving to priests in the form of dana and dakshina. Dana and dakshina was symbolic in the initial days. Later it becomes mandatory and imposing upon them, right? Naman is writing Pashu worshipping. No, I will Pashu worshipping. Pashupati, if you are talking about Pashupati, then Pashupati is a later god, probably connected with the Indus Valley civilization, that god. Sejal Soni, cow. No, do not unnecessarily go in that direction. Cow was a term, Gavishti was used. That is important. Acha, you are all new students. Again, Gavishti is a use for wealth, is a term of economic importance and war simultaneously. It will soon become of its economic importance, having a religious symbolism. Not happening here, do not go in that lane. Anyways, for society also, you can add these elements that in the present times, also the system, the identity of Varna remains, but it is much more complex with the addition of a number of elements in the later on period. The concept of Varna was clean and segregatory. In today's time, it does not remain in that function. Also, for all practical utility, it is non-existent. To some extent, in some communities within the country, it remains as a tool for marriages and nowhere else it remains. These are the very rational approach of presenting or identifying the continuity. It does not in the employment opportunities. It does not in the any restrictive processes. It is not. To some extent, in some communities, it is a tool for marriages, intermarriages. The concept of gotra, that means gotra, it means where the cow is tied, cow pen, so which remains as when same gotras, marriages do not happen. Also the community, these are certain customs and traditions that continues, you can incorporate in your answer. And continuity in religion, definitely the customs and traditions do continue. You can talk about the worship, the sacrifices, the rituals, all the customs, but often it has been modernized. There are multiple other components which have been added to it, right? In this way, you can discuss, but do not try to rigidly pinpoint the continuity. You have to be malleable enough. You have to be able enough to address the changes of the present times as well. So this is what the paper setter evaluators will be looking from the answer. Naman, untouchability is not practiced now. It is a criminal offense, and definitely do not also go in that direction. Untouchability was not practiced in the Vedic societies. I do not know of any of such incidences, right? But also it is a crime and not practiced. But yes, right, you have written Kula, smallest unit of Vedic society. These you can, but again, today also we do not talk about this. Is again, we are rigidly trying to make an connection. Do not, it should be seen that in a very rational approach, how you're thinking as a prospective civil servant. A rationalist approach by pure reasoning has to be reflected in our answer. Now, suppose I want to justify a superstition. I say that the customs have been thought in the right direction and should go back to the past. This is not often the right approach. This will often lead to orthodoxy in your understanding. So you should be abstaining from that, right? So that is how you will be answering this question. So these are certain dimensions we have entertained for the previous year's question papers. You go ahead with your preparation process and wish you all the very best. Thank you.